The Corellian system had been peaceful for over 200 years. 7 planets orbited the gentle orange star, each one home to billions of beings who had never known true war. The Corellians themselves were a slender, graceful species with 4 arms and silver-blue skin that shimmered like water under starlight. They had built their civilization on trade, art, and quiet diplomacy. Violence was not just rare among them, it was almost incomprehensible. Commander Thessal stood in the central communications hub of Coralia Prime, watching the holographic displays with growing horror. The invasion fleet had appeared 3 cycles ago at the edge of their system, moving with terrible purpose toward the inner worlds. The ships were massive, dark things that seemed to eat light itself. No one had seen vessels like them before. "Still no response to our diplomatic channels?" Thessal asked, his 4 hands dancing nervously over the console controls. His silver eyes reflected the red warning lights that had been flashing for days. "Nothing, Commander," replied Junior Officer Vexal, her voice barely above a whisper. "They ignore all our attempts to communicate. They just keep coming." The main display showed the enemy fleet's steady advance. 47 ships, each one larger than anything in the Corellian Defense Force. The Corellians had never needed a strong military. Their space was protected by the Galactic Accords, and disputes were settled through the Council of Peaceful Worlds. But these invaders clearly had no respect for such civilized agreements. "How long until they reach the outer colonies?" Thessal asked, though he already knew the answer would be terrible. 18 standard hours, Vexal replied. "The mining stations on Coralia 7 will be the first targets." Thessal closed his silver eyes and felt the weight of 7 billion lives pressing down on him. The Corellian defense fleet consisted of 12 small patrol craft and 3 outdated frigates. They were meant for rescue operations and escorting trade convoys, not fighting an invasion force that could crush small moons. "Sir," came another voice from across the command center. Lieutenant Zorvan approached with obvious reluctance. "The evacuation ships from the outer worlds are requesting permission to jump to the inner system, but our population centers are already at maximum capacity." The mathematics were simple and heartbreaking. Even if they could evacuate every single Corellian from the path of the invasion, they had nowhere to put them. The neighboring systems were either too far away or already struggling with their own refugee crises from conflicts elsewhere in the galaxy. "Commander," Vexal said, her voice cracking with strain, "the enemy fleet is powering weapons. Long-range sensors are detecting energy signatures that match planet killers." A cold silence fell over the command center. Planet killers were banned by every civilized species in the galaxy. The weapons were designed for one purpose only: the complete destruction of entire worlds. Even the most violent species avoided using them because the ecological and economic damage was beyond calculation. "They mean to sterilize our system," Thessal said quietly. "This is not conquest. This is extermination." The reality hit everyone in the room at once. Whatever these invaders wanted, it was not Corellian resources or territory. They wanted the Corellians gone, completely and permanently gone. "Sir," came a new voice from the communications station, "we're receiving surrender demands from the enemy fleet. They're giving us 6 hours to prepare for what they call cleansing operations." Thessal's hands trembled as he read the translated message on his personal display. The language was clinical, precise, and absolutely terrifying. The invaders had done this before, many times. They spoke of population removal with the same tone others might use to discuss crop rotation. "Do we have any word from the Galactic Council?" Thessal asked desperately. "The nearest Council fleet is 43 days away," Zorvan replied. "Even their fastest ships cannot reach us in time. The emergency beacon was transmitted, but they were alone. 7 billion peaceful beings facing an enemy that specialized in genocide, with no hope of rescue and no way to fight back. The Corellian defense fleet could not even scratch the paint on one of those massive ships. "Commander!" Vexel called out suddenly, her voice filled with surprise. "We're detecting a new signal from the edge of the system. It's not from the invasion fleet." "Show me," Thessal ordered, hope and fear warring in his chest. The holographic display shifted to show the outer edge of the Corellian system. At first, Thessal saw nothing unusual. Then Vexal enhanced the sensor readings, and a small cluster of objects appeared on the screen. 3 ships, she reported. "Unknown configuration. They're broadcasting on standard diplomatic frequencies." "Put them through," Thessal said quickly. The communication speakers crackled, then filled with a voice unlike anything Thessal had ever heard. It was deep, rough, and carried a strange accent that made some words sound almost like growls. "Corellian Defense Command. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet. We received your distress signal and are responding under the mutual defense protocols. Please confirm your situation." "Terran?" Thessal whispered to himself. He had heard that name before, though he could not immediately place it. "Admiral Chen," Thessal replied, activating the communication link. "I am Commander Thessal of Corellia Prime. Our system is under attack by an unknown force. They have demanded our surrender and are threatening to use planet-killer weapons. We do not understand how 3 ships can help us, but we are grateful for any assistance." There was a brief pause before the human voice replied. Even through the translation systems, Thessal could hear something dangerous in the tone. "Commander Thessal, please transmit all sensor data on the enemy fleet. We need to assess the threat level." "Of course," Thessal replied, sending the complete tactical overview to the human ships. He watched the transmission complete, then waited for the inevitable response. 3 small ships could not possibly stand against the massive invasion fleet. These Terrans were brave to come, but they were too late and too few. The pause stretched longer this time. Finally, Admiral Chen's voice returned, and now there was something cold and hard in it that made Thessal's skin prickle. "Commander Thessal, we have reviewed your situation. The enemy force consists of devourers. They are a nomadic species that feeds on planetary destruction. They consume entire ecosystems and move on to the next target. We have encountered them before." "You know these invaders?" Thessal asked, surprised. "We know them," came the grim reply. "And they know us. Commander, I need you to move all your civilian traffic away from the combat zone. Clear the space between your fleet and the enemy force. We're going to handle this." Thessal looked at his tactical display in confusion. "Admiral Chen, with respect, you have 3 ships. The enemy has 47 vessels, each one capable of destroying a moon." "I do not see how—" "Commander," Admiral Chen interrupted, and now her voice carried what could only be described as a predator's smile. "You're looking at our scout ships. The fleet is currently in hyperspace, waiting for targeting data. When I said we're going to handle this, I meant we're going to remove this threat permanently." The communication channel closed, leaving Thessal staring at his officers in bewilderment. "Fleet? What fleet?" The sensors showed only 3 small ships that were barely larger than Corellian patrol craft. "Sir," Vexal called out urgently, "the human ships are moving toward the enemy fleet. They're accelerating to combat velocity." 3 ships against 47? Lieutenant Zorvan shook his head. "This is madness. Brave madness, but still madness." Thessal watched the tactical display as the human ships moved with surprising speed toward the massive Devourer fleet. The enemy vessels were still 18 hours away from the outer colonies, but they would detect the approaching humans soon. When they did, those 3 small ships would be vaporized in seconds. "Sir," Vexal said, her voice filled with wonder, "the human ships are broadcasting something to the Devourer fleet. It's on all frequencies." "Put it through," Thessal ordered. Admiral Chen's voice filled the command center again, but now she was not speaking to the Corellians. She was speaking to their enemies. "Attention, Devourer fleet. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet. You have violated the mutual defense protocols by attacking a protected system. You have been designated as hostile forces threatening civilian populations. By the authority of the Human-Corellian Defense Agreement, you are ordered to withdraw immediately from this system. Thessel blinked in surprise. Human-Corellian Defense Agreement? But we have never negotiated such a treaty. On the display, one of the massive Devourer ships was turning toward the three human vessels. Energy weapons began charging along its hull. Admiral Chen's voice continued, now with an edge of cold satisfaction. Since you are continuing your approach toward civilian targets, you are now classified as confirmed hostiles. All Devourer vessels will be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal procedures. Sir, Vexall whispered, that human ship is smaller than our patrol craft. How can she threaten a Devourer dreadnought? Thessel was about to voice the same question when the universe exploded into light. The space around the human ships suddenly filled with massive vessels that had not been there a moment before. Ship after ship materialized out of hyperspace, with flashes of blue energy that lit up the entire system. First 10 ships, then 20, then 50, then hundreds. Mother of stars, Lieutenant Zorvan breathed. How many ships do they have? The numbers kept climbing. Each human vessel was sleek, predatory, and bristling with weapons that made Corellian military technology look like children's toys. They formed battle formations with practiced precision, moving like a school of hunting fish. Sir, Vexall reported, her voice barely audible, I count over 400 human ships. No, 500. They're still arriving. But these were not exploration vessels or trade ships. These were warships, built for one purpose only. The largest human vessels were nearly as big as Devourer dreadnoughts, but they moved with a speed and grace that should have been impossible for something so massive. Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system again, but now she was speaking to the Corellian Command Center. Commander Thessel, this is Admiral Chen. We have established tactical superiority in your system. Please keep all Corellian vessels clear of the combat zone. We will have this situation resolved shortly. Admiral, Thessel managed to say, his voice filled with awe. How did you know to come here? How did you know we needed help? Commander, the Corellians signed the Mutual Defense Protocols 3 years ago. Your government requested protection in exchange for exclusive trading rights in this sector. When your emergency beacon activated, it automatically triggered our response protocols. Thessel frowned. He had no memory of any such agreement. But then he remembered the trade negotiations with a species that called themselves humans. The talks had seemed routine at the time, just another commercial arrangement. The human delegates had been polite, professional, and had asked for very little in exchange for generous trade terms. Now Thessel realized those humans had been thinking far ahead. They had established a defense pact disguised as a trade agreement, placing themselves as protectors of Corellian space. But why would they do such a thing? What did humans gain by protecting peaceful species like the Corellians? On the tactical display, the Devourer fleet was responding to the sudden appearance of the human armada. The massive alien ships were turning to face this new threat, their weapons charging to full power. But they were not retreating. Devourers never retreated. They consumed everything in their path until they were destroyed. Sir, Vexall reported, the Devourer fleet is forming attack formation. They're preparing to engage the humans. Admiral Chen's voice came through the speakers one final time, cold as space itself. All Devourer vessels, this is your final warning. Withdraw from this system or be destroyed. You have 10 seconds to comply. The largest Devourer ship, a massive vessel that could have served as a mobile fortress, responded by firing every weapon it had directly at the closest human ship. Admiral Chen's reply was simple and terrifying. Weapons free! Light them up! The first salvo from the Devourer flagship lit up space with enough energy to melt a small moon. The massive plasma cannons and particle beams converged on the leading human vessel, a sleek destroyer that looked fragile compared to the armored bulk of its target. Commander Thessale watched in horror, expecting to see the human ship vaporized instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. The human ship simply was not there anymore. "Where did it go?" Lieutenant Zorvan gasped, staring at the tactical display. "Sir," Vexall reported, her voice filled with confusion, "the human vessel appears to have jumped, but not into hyperspace. It moved 3,000 kilometers in less than a second." On the display, the human destroyer reappeared behind the Devourer formation, completely unharmed. But it was not alone. 6 other human ships had appeared alongside it, their weapons already charged and targeting the Devourer vessels from behind. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the chaos. "This is Strike Group Alpha. Targets locked. Engaging." The human ships opened fire, and Thessal learned why the galaxy whispered about human weapons technology. Instead of the slow, massive energy beams favored by most species, the human ships used weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Streams of projectiles moved at impossible speeds, each one guided by targeting systems that could track individual particles. Energy weapons that looked like controlled lightning danced between the human vessels and their targets. The rear shields of 3 Devourer ships collapsed simultaneously. "Impossible," Thessal whispered. "Those shields can stop the main guns of a battle station." "Sir," Vexall reported, her hands flying over her console, "the human weapons are using some kind of phase rotation technology. They're shifting frequency thousands of times per second. The Devourer's shields cannot adapt fast enough." But the Devourers were not helpless. These were ships designed to crack open planets and consume the life within. They turned with surprising speed for such massive vessels, bringing their main guns to bear on the human attackers. What followed was unlike any space battle in recorded history. The Devourers fought like they always had, with overwhelming firepower and brute force. Their weapons could punch through the hull of any known starship. Their shields could absorb punishment that would destroy entire fleets. They had conquered hundreds of worlds using these same tactics. The humans fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. They moved like dancers, their ships flowing around Devourer fire with grace that seemed impossible for such large vessels. When cornered, they would simply disappear and reappear somewhere else, always where the enemy least expected them. Their weapons struck with surgical precision, finding weak points in armor that other species would never have noticed. "How are they moving like that?" Thessal asked, mesmerized by the tactical display. "Sir," Vexall replied, her voice filled with growing excitement, "I think the human ships have gravity manipulation technology. They're not using conventional thrusters, they're warping space around their vessels." But it was not just the technology that made the difference. It was the way the humans used it. Where other species might have formed neat battle lines and traded volleys like ancient naval battles, the humans fought like a pack of wolves. They worked together with perfect coordination, each ship supporting the others in patterns that seemed chaotic, but were actually devastatingly effective. A group of human frigates would engage a Devourer dreadnought from the front, drawing its attention and fire. While the massive alien ship focused on these apparent attackers, human destroyers would appear from 3 different angles, striking critical systems with pinpoint accuracy. By the time the Devourer vessel realized what was happening, its engines would be gone, its weapons offline, and its shields failing. "The humans are not just fighting them," Lieutenant Zorvan observed with wonder. "They are hunting them." The largest Devourer ship, realizing that conventional tactics were failing, tried something desperate. It turned its planet-killer weapon on the human fleet. The weapon that could crack open moons charged to full power, drawing energy from the ship's core. Space itself seemed to bend around the massive cannon as it prepared to unleash destruction that would vaporize everything within 1,000 kilometers. Admiral Chen's voice came through the communications with calm satisfaction. Devourer flagship is charging planet killer. All vessels, execute Broken Arrow Protocol. Thessel had no idea what Broken Arrow Protocol meant, but the human fleet's response was immediate and terrifying. Every human ship in the battle zone suddenly stopped what it was doing. They all turned toward the Devourer flagship and began moving with single-minded purpose. At the same time, more human vessels began appearing from hyperspace. Not dozens this time, but hundreds. "Sir," Vexel reported, her voice barely audible. "I count over 800 human vessels now in the system, and they're all targeting the Devourer flagship." The Devourer weapon fired, sending a beam of concentrated death toward the center of the human formation. For a moment, it seemed like dozens of human ships would be destroyed. Instead, they did something that made Thessel question everything he thought he knew about physics. The human ships created a barrier. Not a shield in any traditional sense, but something that bent the very fabric of space. The planet-killer beam struck this barrier and simply stopped. The energy that should have destroyed worlds was absorbed, contained, and then reflected back at its source. The Devourer flagship's own weapon struck its forward hull with devastating effect, but the humans were not finished. While the massive alien ship reeled from its own reflected fire, the human fleet implemented what could only be described as a coordinated execution. Hundreds of ships attacked from every angle simultaneously, their weapons working in perfect harmony to strip away layers of armor and shielding. The Devourer flagship, a vessel that had destroyed countless civilizations, died in less than 60 seconds. The rest of the Devourer fleet, seeing their command ship obliterated, attempted to retreat. But the humans had anticipated this. Human vessels were already waiting at every possible escape vector. The Devourers found themselves surrounded by an enemy that seemed to know their every move before they made it. They cannot escape, Thessel realized. The humans have trapped them completely. What followed was not a battle, but a systematic elimination. The human fleet moved through the Devourer formation like surgeons, disabling ships with precise strikes and destroying any vessel that attempted to use planet-killer weapons. They showed no mercy, but they also showed no cruelty. It was simply professional work being done by experts. "Sir," Vexal reported, "the last Devourer vessel has been neutralized. The human fleet is... They are sending boarding parties to the disabled ships." "Boarding parties?" Thessal asked in surprise. "But the Devourers fight to the death. They never surrender." Admiral Chen's voice provided the answer. "Commander Thessel, we are securing Devourer data cores and any surviving crew members. The Devourers have information about other planned attacks. We need to extract that intelligence to protect additional systems." The boarding actions were conducted with the same lethal efficiency as the space battle. Human Marines moved through Devourer ships like ghosts, using advanced technology and superior tactics to overcome resistance that had previously been considered impossible to defeat. Within 2 hours, it was over. An invasion fleet that could have destroyed the entire Corellian civilization had been completely eliminated. Not a single human ship had been destroyed, and only 3 had suffered minor damage. Commander Thessel stood in his command center, staring at the tactical display in stunned silence. The space around Coralia Prime was filled with human warships, but there was no longer any threat to his people. "Commander Thessal," Admiral Chen's voice came through the communications. "This is Admiral Chen. The Devourer threat has been neutralized. Your system is secure." "Admiral," Thessel replied, his voice filled with awe and gratitude. We do not have words to thank you. You saved 7 billion lives today." Commander, that is what the mutual defense protocols are for. No one threatens our allies while the Terran defense fleet exists. Thessal paused, considering his next question carefully. Admiral, if I may ask, how did you know to come with such force? How did you know we would face this level of threat? There was a brief pause before Admiral Chen replied, and when she spoke, her voice carried a weight that spoke of long experience with galactic warfare. Commander, the Devourers have been active in this sector for 2 years. They follow predictable patterns, consuming one system before moving to the next. When we signed the defense agreement with your people, we knew they would eventually target Coralia. We have been preparing for this engagement for months. You knew this was coming? Thessal asked in amazement. But why did you not warn us? Because, Commander, warning you would have changed nothing except to cause panic among your population. Your people are peaceful. You have no experience with species like the Devourers. The best protection we could offer was to be ready to respond when the threat materialized. Thessal considered this answer. The humans had essentially used the Corellians as bait, allowing the Devourers to commit to an attack before springing their trap. It was cold, calculating, and absolutely brilliant. The Devourer fleet had been completely destroyed, eliminating the threat not just to Coralia but to dozens of other systems that would have been next on their path of destruction. Admiral, Thessal said slowly, you used our distress call to lure the entire Devourer fleet into a trap. That is correct, Commander. The Devourers are nomadic. Finding their complete fleet in one location is extremely difficult. Your emergency beacon allowed us to eliminate the entire threat instead of fighting a running battle across multiple systems. The implications were staggering. The humans had not just responded to a cry for help. They had orchestrated a strategic victory that protected countless worlds. They had turned the Corellians' moment of greatest danger into an opportunity to eliminate a threat to galactic peace. Sir, Lieutenant Zorvan said quietly, the human fleet is beginning to withdraw. Only a small force is remaining in the system. On the tactical display, most of the human warships were disappearing into hyperspace as efficiently as they had arrived. Within minutes, the massive fleet that had seemed to fill the entire system was gone, leaving only a dozen vessels orbiting at the edge of Corellian space. Admiral Chen's voice came through the communications one more time. Commander Thessal, we are leaving a patrol squadron in your system for the next 30 days. They will assist with cleanup operations and ensure no other threats approach your worlds. The Terran Defense Fleet will maintain regular patrols in this sector going forward. Admiral, Thessal said, his voice filled with emotion, we will never forget what you have done for us today. If there is anything we can do to repay this debt— Commander, Admiral Chen interrupted, and now her voice carried warmth that had not been there during the battle. You already did repay us. 3 years ago, your government agreed to provide medical supplies and humanitarian aid to human colonies affected by natural disasters. Last year, Corellian doctors saved over 10,000 human lives during the plague outbreak on Terra Nova. We protect our friends, Commander. That is what friends do. The communication channel closed, leaving Thessal and his staff in thoughtful silence. Sir, Vexal said quietly, I have been reviewing the records from the trade negotiations 3 years ago. The humans asked for very little, but they negotiated defense provisions that seemed unnecessary at the time. They knew this was coming even then. Thessal nodded slowly. The humans were long-term thinkers, planning years ahead and positioning themselves to protect their allies before those allies even knew they needed protection. They had turned a simple trade agreement into a mutual defense pact, ensuring that when the Devourers came, they would be ready. But there was something else that impressed Thessal even more than the humans' strategic planning or their military technology. It was their willingness to risk their own lives to protect a species they barely knew, simply because they had given their word. Sir, Lieutenant Zorvan said, breaking the silence, What do we tell the people? How do we explain what happened here today? Thessal considered the question. How could they explain that their peaceful civilization had been saved by a species that treated warfare like an art form? How could they describe the casual efficiency with which the humans had eliminated a threat that would have meant the end of everything the Corellians had built? We tell them the truth, Thessal said finally. We tell them that when we called for help, the humans came, and we tell them that as long as our alliance holds, we will never face such darkness alone. Outside the command center windows, the stars shone peacefully over Coralia Prime. 7 billion lives continued in safety, protected by guardians they had never seen coming. 3 weeks after the battle, Commander Thessal stood in the observation deck of the Corellian Council building, watching human ships conduct patrol sweeps around the outer system. The vessels moved with the same precise efficiency they had shown during the fight, but now their purpose was protection rather than destruction. The door behind him opened with a soft chime, and Admiral Chen entered the room. This was the first time Thessal had met her in person, and he was surprised by what he saw. She was smaller than he had expected, with gray streaks in her dark hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of years spent making difficult decisions. She looked more like a teacher or administrator than the commander of the most fearsome military force in the galaxy. "Commander Thessal," she said with a slight smile, "thank you for agreeing to meet with me. I hope the security sweeps have not been too disruptive to your people." "Not at all, Admiral," Thessal replied, gesturing toward the chairs arranged near the large windows. "Your people have been remarkably courteous, though I admit we are still processing everything that has happened." They sat together, looking out at the peaceful stars that had so recently been filled with deadly warships. Admiral Chen followed his gaze to where one of her patrol vessels was conducting a routine sensor sweep. "You have questions," she said quietly. "I can see them in your expression. Most species do after their first encounter with human military doctrine." Thessal nodded, grateful for her directness. "Admiral, my people have been reviewing the battle records and the intelligence your forces gathered from the Devourer ships. The scope of what you prevented, it goes far beyond just protecting Coralia. The Devourers were planning to consume 17 systems over the next 2 years, Admiral Chen confirmed, including several major trade hubs and 3 species homeworlds. Eliminating their entire fleet here saved approximately 40 billion lives. 40 billion, Thessal repeated softly. "And you knew this when you signed the defense agreement with us 3 years ago?" Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment, her eyes fixed on the distant stars. "Commander, would you like to know the truth about humans and warfare?" "Very much so, Admiral." She leaned back in her chair, her expression becoming distant. "Most species develop space travel and then discover that the galaxy is a dangerous place. They build defenses, form alliances, and hope for the best. Humans are different. We developed our understanding of warfare long before we reached the stars." "I do not understand," Thessal said. "Commander, humans have been fighting each other for our entire recorded history. Not just small conflicts, but massive wars involving millions of soldiers and weapons capable of destroying entire continents. By the time we achieved spaceflight, we had already perfected every aspect of warfare imaginable." Admiral Chen stood and walked to the window, her reflection ghost-like against the star field. "When we first encountered other species, we were shocked to discover that most of them had never experienced anything like human-style warfare. The Corellians, for example, have not had a significant military conflict in over 400 years. The Valaxians have never fought a war involving more than a few hundred soldiers. Even the more aggressive species like the Kratari fight with rules and limitations that humans would consider quaint." "But why do you use this knowledge to protect others?" Thessal asked. "Most species would use such advantages for conquest." Admiral Chen turned back to face him, and Thessal saw something in her eyes that he had not expected: sadness. Because we know where that path leads, Commander. Human history is filled with conquerors who used superior technology and tactics to dominate weaker peoples. We have seen the results of unchecked aggression, and we have learned that true strength comes from protection, not domination. She returned to her chair and pulled out a small device that projected a holographic image into the air between them. The image showed a blue and green world that Thessel did not recognize. This is Earth, our homeworld. 50 years ago, we nearly destroyed ourselves in what we call the final wars. Nuclear weapons, biological warfare, orbital bombardment platforms. We used everything we had created against our own species. Over 3 billion humans died in less than 2 years. Thessel stared at the image in horror. Your own people? Different nations, different ideologies, different reasons for fighting. In the end, none of those reasons mattered when we stood on the edge of extinction. The image shifted to show cities in ruins, landscapes poisoned by radiation, and vast graveyards filled with more markers than Thessel could count. "What stopped the war?" he asked quietly. "A simple realization," Admiral Chen replied. "We discovered that we were not alone in the universe. Our first contact was with a species called the Benthans, peaceful traders who had been monitoring our radio signals for decades. When they finally revealed themselves, they showed us what we looked like from the outside. The holographic image changed to show a recording of Earth from space, its continents scarred by weapons fire, and its atmosphere choked with the debris of orbital battles. The Benthans asked us a single question. Is this what you want to be remembered for? They showed us examples of other species that had destroyed themselves through warfare, and they asked us to consider what humanity's legacy would be if we continued on our path." Admiral Chen paused, her expression thoughtful. "That question changed everything, Commander. We realized that our greatest strength, our understanding of warfare, could be our greatest weakness if used without wisdom. Or it could be our greatest gift if used to protect those who cannot protect themselves." "So, you chose to become protectors," Thessal said. "We chose to become what we wish we had encountered during our darkest hours," Admiral Chen corrected. "When the Benthans first made contact, they could have conquered Earth easily. Their technology was centuries ahead of ours, and we were already weakened by our own conflicts. Instead, they offered us knowledge, guidance, and hope. They showed us that there was another way to exist in the galaxy." The holographic image shifted again, showing scenes of human and Benthan scientists working together, human ships carrying humanitarian aid to disaster-stricken worlds, and human diplomats mediating disputes between species that had never learned to resolve conflicts peacefully. "The mutual defense protocols are based on the Benthan model," Admiral Chen continued. "We offer protection and assistance in exchange for cooperation and mutual aid. We use our military capabilities to ensure that peaceful species can continue to develop and flourish without fear of extinction." "But the cost must be enormous," Thessal observed. "Maintaining fleets like the one that saved us, training personnel, developing new technologies. How do you justify such expenses to your people?" Admiral Chen smiled, and for the first time, Thessal saw genuine warmth in her expression. "Commander, do you know what humans value most?" "I am afraid I do not." "The knowledge that our children will inherit a better galaxy than the one we found. Every ship we build, every soldier we train, every treaty we sign is an investment in a future where species like the Corellians can pursue art, science, and philosophy without fear of annihilation." She stood and walked back to the window, gesturing toward the patrol ships moving through the distant void. Those vessels represent the hopes and dreams of 10 billion humans who decided that our talent for warfare should serve life rather than death. Every human who serves in the defense fleet volunteers to risk their life protecting people they may never meet on worlds they may never visit. That is remarkable, Thessel said, struggling to comprehend such selflessness. But surely some humans must object to using their resources to protect other species. Of course, Admiral Chen acknowledged. Humans are not perfect, Commander. We still have those who believe in conquest, domination, and species supremacy. But they are outnumbered by those who remember the lessons of the final wars. We have seen what happens when military power serves only itself. The holographic projector displayed a new image, a vast space station orbiting a star that Thessel did not recognize. The structure was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, and it bristled with technology that seemed to bend light around its edges. This is Prometheus Station, our primary military research facility, Admiral Chen explained. Every new weapon system, every defensive technology, every tactical doctrine we develop is tested and evaluated by a council that includes representatives from over 30 species. We do not deploy any military innovation without ensuring that it serves the cause of peace. You allow other species to oversee your military development? Thessal asked in amazement. We require it, Admiral Chen corrected. Human military innovation, unchecked by outside perspective, led to the final wars. We will never again develop weapons without considering their impact on galactic stability. The image shifted to show the interior of the station, where humans worked alongside beings from dozens of different species. They were collaborating on technologies that seemed to exist at the very edge of possibility. Weapons that could disable entire fleets without destroying them, defensive systems that could protect planets from any conceivable attack, and communication networks that could coordinate rescue operations across vast distances. The Devourer fleet was destroyed using weapons designed by this council, Admiral Chen continued. Every system used in that battle was evaluated and approved by representatives from peaceful species. We use only the minimum force necessary to neutralize threats. Minimum force? Thessel repeated. Admiral, you obliterated 47 massive warships in less than 4 hours. Admiral Chen's expression grew serious. Commander, the weapons we used in that battle represent perhaps 10% of human military capability. We could have ended the fight in minutes, but that would have required technologies that might have caused collateral damage to your system. Instead, we used precise, controlled applications of force to ensure that the threat was eliminated without endangering Corellian lives or property. The implications of this statement hung in the air like a physical presence. If what Admiral Chen was saying was true, then humans possessed military capabilities that defied imagination, and they chose to restrain that power, using only what was necessary to protect others. Why are you telling me this, Admiral? Thessel asked. This information could change how the galaxy views humanity. Because, Commander, you represent a crucial decision point for your species, Admiral Chen replied. The battle 3 weeks ago demonstrated human military power to the entire galaxy. Within months, every major species will know that humans can eliminate threats that they considered unstoppable. How your people choose to respond to that knowledge will influence how other species react. Admiral Chen returned to her seat and leaned forward, her expression intent. Commander Thessel, humanity stands at a crossroads. We can continue to operate quietly, protecting peaceful species through discreet interventions and hidden alliances. Or we can step forward as open guardians of galactic peace, working with all species to create a framework for collective security. What would such a framework look like? Thessel asked. The holographic projector displayed a new image, a vast network of interconnected star systems, each one marked with symbols representing different species and their contributions to a galactic alliance. Imagine a galaxy where every peaceful species contributes according to their abilities, Admiral Chen said. Her voice filled with quiet passion. The Corellians offer medical expertise and humanitarian aid. The Valaxians provide advanced materials science. The Scythians share their agricultural innovations, and humans provide the military security that allows all of these species to flourish without fear. A galactic confederation based on mutual aid and protection, Thessel mused. But would species accept human military leadership? Not leadership, Commander. Partnership. Humans would provide military capabilities, but strategic decisions would be made collectively by representatives from all member species. No single species would have the power to dominate the others. Admiral Chen gestured toward the window, where Corellian and human ships could be seen conducting joint patrols. We have been testing this model in smaller alliances for the past 5 years. The results have been remarkable. Trade has increased by 300% in protected systems. Scientific collaboration has accelerated the development of new technologies. And military conflicts have virtually disappeared in sectors where the mutual defense protocols are active. And species like the Devourers would face the combined military might of dozens of civilizations, coordinated by human strategic doctrine and supported by technologies developed through collective research. Admiral Chen's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. No predatory species could stand against such an alliance. Thessal stood and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful star field where his people could continue to pursue their quiet lives of art and contemplation. The decision Admiral Chen was asking him to consider would reshape the galaxy, but it would also ensure that future generations of Corellians would never again face the terror of imminent extinction. "Admiral," he said finally, "what do you need from Corellia to make this vision a reality?" Admiral Chen smiled, and Thessal could see that she had hoped for exactly this response. "Your voice, Commander. The Corellians are respected throughout the galaxy as a peaceful, rational species. If you endorse the concept of collective security under human protection, other species will listen. If you speak of the benefits of partnership with humans, they will consider joining the alliance. And in return, Corellia becomes a founding member of the Galactic Peace Coalition, with all the protections and benefits that entails. Your people will help shape the policies that govern galactic security, and you will have the guarantee that no force in the universe can threaten Corellian civilization as long as the alliance endures." Thessal considered the offer, weighing the implications for his people and for the galaxy as a whole. The humans were offering to use their terrifying military capabilities to create a peace that could last for millennia. All they asked in return was trust and cooperation. "Admiral Chen," he said finally, "on behalf of the Corellian people, I accept your proposal. We will stand with humanity in building this new alliance." Admiral Chen stood and extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. As Thessal grasped it, he felt the weight of history settling around them. "Commander," she said, "today marks the beginning of a new age for the galaxy. An age where peace is protected by strength, where cooperation replaces competition, and where no species need fear extinction at the hands of those who would consume worlds." Outside the window, the stars shone with the promise of a future where humanity's greatest talent, the art of warfare, would serve as the foundation for the greatest peace the galaxy had ever known.